So today, Jim Clark, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Vic. Yeah, I'm good.
Good to have you on here. Been waiting for a while. So
It's good to be here.
traditional first question is, what do you do?
Um, I should have prepared. I should have had a list of questions before. Well, I don't know. I mean, I do know, but it is kind of hard to know where to begin on it. I mean, I'm an IT computer person. I make animation for like motion capture animation for um, game developers and animators, but that's actually kind of come later. And the reason I struggle to answer that question is it's very much I've kind of just fallen into um, what I do. Although that being said, I can always look back at growing up and stuff and see that there was an obvious trajectory that was going to happen. But so a large part of my kind of I guess adult working life has been creating content in an online game called Second Life. Um, I probably started that in about 2003. So it's definitely the longest video game I've ever played.
Right.
I wouldn't say I really play it now. It's because it's more of a job now than it was, which is just how things kind of roll. But in Second Life, I mean, where it originated, so you can see my brain's all over the place trying to trying to organize it in some kind of order. I always struggle whenever anybody says to me, "So what do you do?" I always struggle, not because there's anything particularly weird or unusual. It's just where to start with it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I guess I'll start from the beginning. I was a web developer. I started web development and building websites, and that was around 2000. When we had the whole .com bubble, they call it, and everything. And um, and prior to that, I was always a kind of coder, like making video games in my bedroom and whatnot. Um, then around around 2003 or something, that's when I'd get back from my job. I would go and I'd just sort of chill out playing online games were a new thing then, very new. And I thought this was great because it's like online. You get the community aspect of it, and just something to pass the evenings away. And I've never really been a television person. I don't really care that much about what's on telly or anything like that. And then I remember one day I just saw this advert pop up, and it was like, be anything you want to be, a mad scientist, a wizard, anything. And I was like, well, that sounds interesting. So, I signed up for the game and I logged into it. And I thought this is brilliant because what it was an open world kind of platform, but the game developers hadn't created anything in it. It was just a blank canvas. But the people that played it were given tools to build primitive objects. They could code like the scripts, so they could. So basically, I could take the web development skills I had, or the previously game development, and instead of building boring like kind of travel websites, which is what I kind of was involved in at the time, I could make flying carpets
Mm,
and cars and a
that
magic
sounds much more
staff that
interesting.
had smoke coming up from it. And I thought this is brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. What a way to blow off steam at the end of the day.
Mm.
Come back, use the same skill set to make something really like kind of wild. Um and I've always had a kind of uh like for the absurd as well. Stuff that's just a bit weird and a bit absurd. And this platform is absolutely perfect for that. I mean,
Mm.
and when you've got that hyper creative environment, because that's what it is, everybody there is creative. They're all making it. The whole world is built by the people in it. Um, that also brings out the most absurd. It's brilliant. People's imaginations just let loose. Back then it was very, very primitive. I think when I joined, there was only a couple of thousand people in it. Um, it grew and they improved upon the platform. In some ways, it's actually a shame because in doing so, they added a layer of complexity. It became more and more professional, as it were.
Right.
And whilst originally the basic tools were very rough, and so if you made something, it didn't look very good. It wasn't, high quality game standard, but the tools were there for people to come in and make anything. So and that in itself would just get the cogs turning. Oh, what could I make? So I'd be sitting at work, like doing my boring travel website stuff, thinking, what can I make when I get home tonight? What could I start working on? And anyway, so at that point, it was just a game, and I was enjoying it. Um, like lots of games, and online communities, which was one of the first, I guess, massively multiplayer online communities. It had an economy, again, very, very basic back then, not many people there, but it meant that people, when they made stuff, they could sell it to people. And I remember, what was it I made? I made one of the first things I made was a giant, it was just a big box, but it had loads of like glowing particles inside. I called it a particle universe. And it was just all of this like pretty stuff. And all you did, you stood in it and you could just a bit like a kind of planetarium kind of thing. Um, and it was in a public sandbox. They had these public sandbox areas where everyone would go and create. And that was also fun because not only were you creating, but somebody next to you would be. So I'm working on a magic carpet. Somebody next to me is building a dragon or something. So people would get talking, and then I had this big. It was quite an ugly box actually. On the outside, it was just a big, big black box. Just very ugly on the outside, but really pretty on the inside. And then somebody just came up and said, "How much for your particle universe?" And I'd never really thought about it until that point. I just thought, well, I don't know. What do you think it's worth? Anything, you can have it free. They're like, no, I must give you something for it. Um, and so they did, and then that meant that I could go and buy some other creators' kind of content. At the beginning, it was slow, and again, I just thought not much of that. I didn't really think much about it. Then, as I built more items, I kind of set up a little store. All avatars got a very basic small plot land as part of the account, so that it was just there ready to go. So I just set the store up, and I had my magic carpets, and I said I had a magic staff, and my first kind of inclination at the time was to, because the advert, do you want to be a mad scientist, whatever. Well, I definitely wanted to be a wizard. And for
And why wouldn't you be?
no, why
Exactly.
not? Well, for a while I was an Egyptian god as well. It's like
Oh,
you,
well. Hey, come on.
anything. It was brilliant. I had the kilt and everything, and I had the head.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it was Anubis I dressed as at the time.
Right. Okay.
I don't know why, because my I was more interested in kind of Thoth and everything like that at the time, um, but that was where my the creative thing just go. I mean, I was lots of different characters, different times,
Yeah.
and again, that's an expression of just that whole world, everyone expressing themselves very outwardly in what how they dress. Um, but so I had this little store, and then it was slow at first, but then it started to trickle in, and then and then before I knew it, I realized, well, I've got enough to actually upgrade my account to have a bit more land. And so I thought, and it won't cost me anything. I thought this is like a free, it's like for free. So I did. I got a bit of a bigger land, and which I built a bigger store, and then in time I put more in it. And during this whole time, more people have been discovering Second Life. It was very, very young. I mean, I think it only started in 2003. Um, Suddenly, it seemed to start making enough that I could actually go, well, I finished this month and there's $100 in the account. Maybe I should just cash that out. It's um, and I was just starting out, paying off a student loan, and I was struggling a little bit. I still had my job at the time. Um, but again, I started to have thoughts of, now I wonder if you can make $100 a month,
Mm.
how much would it take for me to, give up making websites and just make magic carpets for a living? Um, there were a few other things I was interested in at the time as well, like affiliate marketing was something else. So I had a
Yeah, yeah,
few
that was
other,
something back in that period of time was quite, wasn't
yeah,
it?
it was a big old thing. I mean, it still is, but it's not such a big deal, I guess, now because of the way search engines. I mean, it was very easy to get good search results, and one of the things I was doing I had going on with my job was building this travel website. I won't name it. It was a company in Tunbridge Wells, but It was a big website at the time, and they had a feed coming in from showing all the available holidays and everything. And I very quickly realized at the time how search engines were working, and they were very primitive. Now you have to. It's really hard. Now you have to have YouTubes, and you have to have good reviews and good reputation, and people don't understand. I don't understand like I used to how the algorithms will work now. Back then, it was very much based on just the keywords.
Yeah,
And there was this realization I had where, with there's a website with I've got all this data coming in, and it's like different holidays. And I also knew from the statistics on the website who was buying, who was finding us. And they were just literally cheap holidays and was the main keyword. But then they would type cheap holidays to Greece. So or whatever. So I thought, so what if I just create 50,000 web pages that each target each of those
yeah.
things pulling the data in? So I'd set that up, and it suddenly exploded overnight. In fact, we got in trouble with the data provider at the time because we were apparently getting more traffic than some other websites and bringing their. I guess they thought it was a denial of service attack or something, trying to, but it wasn't. It was actually Google spidering our website was hitting their servers pretty hard. Um, which it's a whole other story. I've gone a bit off track there, but
No, no, this is
um,
really interesting because it takes me back to like, when you were saying about keywords and the fact that you could, I can't remember the name of these places like ClickBank and stuff like that, where
yeah,
you could,
yeah.
and of
Trade
course all of that,
Doubler, yeah, Click Commission Junction was one that
yeah, that's it.
at the time.
Yeah,
There,
yeah, yeah.
there's still big things, but the internet's changed now.
Yes, it
It's
has.
all social media and YouTube and similar Instagram stuff like that.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
world's very different. I mean, I was reflecting on this last night actually and thinking, I had this realization. It's really weird that around the 90s, around the time where I was growing up and I was coming, for guitar lessons with you back in the day. Um, if we looked at, say, the 1950s, it wasn't really that different. I mean, cars looked different, and maybe people didn't. But well, even in the 90s, the mobile phone was still quite a big brick. Um, but it felt like it was the same world.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking now, it's sudden realization that everything with the internet, particularly, has changed the world so much now
Hmm.
that kids today, they must feel a massive divide. Like I would be in the 90s and 1950s didn't really seem like a long time ago to me. It just
Mm.
didn't. It was like, okay, it was older than me in my life, but it didn't seem like a long time ago. And that was largely because I think the world didn't seem different. But
Mm.
kids now, they must think that we're ancient, to not cassette tapes, the
Yeah.
CDs, cassette tapes, records, everybody having internet in their thing in their hands. It's like it's such a big change in such a short period of time.
Mm.
Um, and we're kind of privileged actually in a way to have lived in a period to see that change.
Mm.
But the change, the what with the internet, how that's changed. Um, and I kind of miss the old days a bit because those days of, oh, is that how the internet works? And suddenly like the world's your oyster. It's like,
Mm.
but it's just not things. I mean, there still are people, but it's getting more and more complicated and more niche as things go.
Yeah, because I think this is really interesting because the early days of the internet was almost like it was completely open to everyone.
Yeah,
This sort of democratization of communication.
yeah.
Of course, it's not like that now. It's
Uh-huh.
because the big money has come in.
And it happens with things, doesn't it?
It
Right.
does, it does. So in those days, okay, it meant it was a little bit like the Wild West because things
Mm.
happened, where people could make money out of you. Because especially when you had things like
Yeah,
dial-up, you could find, your computer dialed someplace in the Pacific, and
yeah,
you had to pay 100 quid or something, and you think, well, how does that happen? Now, okay, all of that is a different sort of scenario, but you don't get that thing where, as an ordinary person,
mm.
you could communicate with lots of people cheaply. Now, this is
Yeah,
ironic because you'd think, well, come on, you just put something on Facebook. But back in the day, you could put an advert um, in the back of the local newspaper in a classified ad,
yeah,
and you knew that you were going to get lots of people seeing your
yeah,
advert. Nowadays, it's so random. There are so many
yeah.
platforms, and it's not cheap if you wanted to advertise,
No, no,
and
it's
it's
not.
actually really difficult. And this is something I think, because again, you know how I
Mm.
tend to sort of look at something and go, well, this doesn't just happen here because it's happening over here as well,
Yeah,
and you can see that with music and bands and artists.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
Back in the day, you needed a record contract, but the
yeah,
point was, if you did a load of gigs in your local area, people knew who you were because people were coming out and
yeah,
seeing you
yeah.
playing, obviously.
It's
But
almost like
nowadays,
the internet's too many, is too big a sea. I mean, the
indeed,
other example, as you were speaking, I was just thinking that the days of standing outside our price, flogging a
yeah,
load of CDs to get in the charts, the very
yeah,
idea that that was even possible.
yeah,
I mean, everyone would complain at the time, oh, that's not fair, or it's really difficult, or you need the money to do that. But the point is it was possible. It was possible for a little band. No, I've run to a few people now through my life in various things and various places, and they're like, yeah, well, back in the 80s, I had a bit of a thing on top of the pops, and you're like, really? And it's like really exciting. And but they would never be able to do that now. I mean, we
yeah,
have access to so much music, and through Spotify and everything, every band, and there's online digital radio stations that I listen to where I will discover music around the world that I never would have discovered. But at the same time, there's almost like there's too much of it now,
yes,
and there's a sea of it. And even if somebody comes along and they have something really unique and special, getting found,
yeah,
it's like a diamond ring in the ocean. How do you find it?
exactly. Absolutely right. And because we've spoken a lot about sort of creative processes and stuff, particularly to do with music and everything. And I'm not saying it's not possible to do things, but I don't think it is in the way that we think how
Mm.
you would do it. Like, it's certainly not a case of putting a load of stuff on Instagram or whatever,
Yeah,
because those numbers, it's like statistics, isn't it? You know, they're lies and damn lies and statistics. And you sort
Mm.
of go, well, you might be getting 10,000 people or 100,000 people viewing something, but what is that quality of that viewing?
The quality is what matters very much,
Exactly.
in my opinion.
Well, and you look at the whole
Yeah.
thing where people go, the thing about choice is the biggest scam that we've been given for so long. Oh, it would be amazing because there'll be, 150 different TV channels. But when you get the 150 plus TV channels, most of it is playing a load of old junk that you don't want
Yeah.
to see. And
Yeah.
back in the day when we had 3 and 4 channels, I mean, originally we had 2, but the quality of the programming, wow, brilliant.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was absolutely brilliant. And so you think, well, it's not about choice. And that's the problem. If there's too much choice, it confuses people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I actually, with regard to that, with regard to things like, particularly when I used to do the advertising for stuff like Blues Camp. So there's the summer school that I used to
Mm.
run. Um, we had people come in and say, oh, you can do this, you get thousands. You think, no, we actually only just need a few people.
Mm.
So if you just did a very simple ad, and it literally might be going back to the basics of doing flyers, something where you connected with people that you knew that were sort of in your target market, because this is the classic thing with advertising, isn't it? It's that thing
Yeah.
about what is your hot prospect? And they've got to be people that, they can't just be anyone. They've got to be people that are in that sort of target area. They're playing a musical instrument. They might be of a certain age. They might be, that type of thing where you sort of go, yeah, well, where are you going to see those? Well, they're going to be in specific places. They might be at
Yeah.
gigs.
Yeah.
They might be, the local music shop. We've got many of them now. But it would be something where you've got the people and they're gathering in a certain place. And this seems to be the thing that people, they obviously understand it, but to replicate that in an online world is actually very
Yeah.
difficult.
I mean, it's getting harder now. I mean, going back to Second Life, that's actually been one of the big kind of selling points that's been consistent through it is live music, where people could actually, go and they have the virtual stage and they just stream it through there with a virtual audience, but a real audience.
Mm.
But that's kind of one of the exceptions now because everything else with the internet has moved in a direction that's very individualistic. It's very
Yes.
much about the individual. I'll have my kind of little space where I broadcast out to the world, but I don't interact with the groups. So the groups don't form in the way that they used to, or the way that they would in real life more when people get together. And I think that's a shame. Um, that's one of the downsides, really. I mean, I've spent most of my life as I guess, a technologist and always wanting to know the latest tech. But I am maybe at a point now where um, I kind of feel that it's done more damage than good in the overall
Mm.
picture of it all. But as we've talked about before, it's the thing is there's no point dwelling on what could have been or what the past was.
No, absolutely.
It is what it is now.
Yeah.
But there are good aspects to it. I mean, there are opportunities that there
Mm.
never used to be, and I think that's where, um, and that's always been the case. It's finding the audience, but it's also um, trying finding ways to do things that are not the norm, standing out from the crowd. And
Yes.
I think one of the things that's also tragic about the sea we were talking about, the ocean, is that there are still opportunities, but what the vast majority of people tend to do is rather than look for something unique, they try to copy what everybody else is doing. So
Yes.
when
Oh my God.
the more
Absolutely.
the more people you end up with the more grey and bland it becomes, and it becomes harder. Um, I mean, I think it's a bit like, you know how in your book you talk about the maps,
Yeah,
and all this kind of navigation
yeah,
stuff. It's almost like the more people you get that are hammering at the same thing,
yeah.
the harder it is for us to break free of that and, see things differently. But when we do, um, then, and I feel free to explore avenues that we might not have done. I mean, my coming back to the second knife thing. I mean, I never started it thinking that it would then end up making enough money that it would become my full-time job for 20 odd years and then lead to other things as offshoots and stuff. Um, but if I had have always thought of it as this is just a game, it will never do much. And there was a lot in the early days that I did see on the forums and stuff, lots of naysayers that were like, "Oh, you could never do this. You could never do that."
Oh my God.
And I was sitting there looking at them saying, should I tell them that I know they're not?" And I got, no,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
that's
yeah.
not because, because then they would all come and copy because that's the other thing,
Yeah, exactly.
if
Now
you've got your little thing, then
you've hit about 3 or 4 key points right off the bat. Okay. So first of all, the anomaly. Everybody's doing something. They know they think they know how it works, whatever it is. How to be a great
yeah,
guitar player, how to be, where music's going, where, how you're going to make money in the world, blah, 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 blah,
yeah,
blah. And then somebody comes along and disrupts that.
mm,
And because again, the map is not the territory. So everybody's got this map and it's this, and
mm,
then somebody comes along and they don't have the same map as everybody else. So you get the Jimi Hendrix or you get the Miles
yeah,
Davis or whatever, and they actively disrupt the thing. Not because they've sat down and thought about disrupting it. Like yourself, it sort of almost happens by accident that
mm,
you find that you can make money doing something in a particular way. And if you'd sat down and tried to work that out, you would never have arrived at that.
no, the
And that's one of the
nature,
points. Yeah,
yeah,
that's one of the points. The other thing is you always get people advising you badly, but because they are coming from what is considered normal.
yeah,
And if you're not doing something that's normal, you are abnormal.
mm,
You're doing something ridiculous. So you're being, you look at the naysayers saying there's, well, not gonna last. I mean,
yeah,
how many times have you heard that when you listen to stories like the Stones, oh, it might last for 4 years, might last for 3 years, you know.
yeah,
And then, people telling me like when I was at school, well, you're never going to make money out of playing music. I mean, forget it.
yeah, yeah.
Because you don't play the cello. So how can you possibly join an orchestra? It's like, well, I'm not going to be joining an orchestra,
Like people in
right?
orchestras make loads of money or something anymore.
Exactly, exactly.
It's
But you
like,
can see how mindsets go. So if
yeah,
you look at that and you go, right, okay, we have whatever is the order. I mean, it's classic at the moment. We talk about the world order, right?
yeah,
Um, and everybody goes, oh, well, this is how it goes. And then you get somebody comes in and disrupts that, not necessarily, for a good thing or a bad thing. And then somebody else goes and hang on a minute. Well, why did we look at it this way? Why don't we
mm,
look at it this way? And there are other opportunities. And I do think that if we always keep that in our mind, that the map that we have and that the maps that other people aren't have are not true. They may be realistic, but they don't contain everything, and they could be completely different.
yeah, yeah,
And we've had this conversation about medieval maps. We're putting Jerusalem in the middle,
yeah,
but
yeah,
they obviously worked for people.
yeah.
It's just not in the way that we understood them,
Oh,
right?
and even the global maps we have today are all kind of skewed and
Yeah,
everything,
of
and
course
that's
they are.
actually what they really are.
Exactly, because
Um,
obviously, case in point is Greenland. If you look at it on a map, it's absolutely massive. It's a
yeah,
big
very
island,
complicated.
but it's not as big as it looks on the map. right?
mm.
So when you sort of scale that down and move it to Africa, it's
Yeah.
big, but it's not as big as Africa.
Mm.
It's maybe I don't know, quarter of the size of Africa or something, but it's not as
Yeah.
big as Africa. But when you look at it on the map, it's the same size as Africa, right?
Yeah.
And this is the trouble, that when we try to make things logical,
Mm.
because we have to, it distorts actually what's going on. We
I mean,
make
I think we don't
assumptions.
have to. I don't think.
No,
I think
but the point is that
I
no,
think
we don't
we're
exactly.
edu
No, I
we're
do. But
educated. We're educated
yes,
to doing that.
now that's a very good point. But what I was sort of trying to say is that, and again, this is an NLP. There are
Yeah.
deletions, there are exaggerations, and everything in what we say, because we can only deal with certain amount of detail. But
Yeah.
what ends up happening is that we think that the detail that we've got is absolutely all of the detail, and of course it isn't. Um, and then if we scale that back, so there were a couple of other points that you raised just in that section, about how things operate and how you made a success of something that people were sort of poo-pooing.
Mm.
That the people who discover things, it's normally by accident,
Mm.
or it's not by design, not by conscious design. It's almost subliminal design where you just stumble into something.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated by this because it really seems to be part of the creative process that because we can't because we can't manufacture stumbling into something,
Mm.
um, we sort of ignore it. But most things are by serendipity,
Yeah. Yeah.
of some description, where you hear something from another, and that tends to be the way I think. I'm drawing ideas in from different places and then
Mm.
applying them
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
music or whatever. Um, that you could see something that operates in a particular ecosystem,
Yeah.
and I use that word ecosystem, very, very loosely. You can see something that happens in game design, for instance, right? And you go, well, that's interesting because that's a very similar sort of thing that could apply over here.
Mm.
And that's why I'm really intrigued by what people do. That's not necessarily what I do,
Mm.
but we don't generally do that because, again,
No,
we
no.
like to put things in a little box.
Yeah. And I think, as you're saying, that people stumble into stuff, but I think they kind of aren't really stumbling in. When you look back in hindsight, you realize that actually what they've maybe subconsciously been doing is
Yes,
exactly what you are talking about,
yes,
actually controlling it.
yeah,
So, what is that process when what's led people to stumble into it? It's a way of thinking, it's the things they've learned. It's
yeah,
the biggest thing is a willingness to go down the avenues that maybe are the dark ones where you can't see what's down there.
yeah,
But to go down there and know that actually it will be all right. And it will. One of the biggest scams that is drilled into us, and this was drilled in a lot to me, or they tried to drill it into me at school, um, is just this idea that you must, I guess, the map, you must follow this thing, and that if you
yeah,
don't, you're in terrible danger. But
yeah,
actually, I mean, we live such a short period of time. I mean, really, in the scale of it, and there aren't, there are social rules that we should live by and stuff. But when it comes to what can I do with my life, this big question. There's not really anything stopping anybody. I mean, there are constraints that people have to overcome, but that's
yeah,
just part of the challenge. And the difference of going down that dark avenue and saying, well, it's dark, I can't see where I'm going. What am I going to do? To say, well, I'll just start walking down it and maybe I'll use my hands or maybe I'll find a light somewhere. And it's that willingness to just take that kind of leap. And I think the accidental thing Um, when you pay attention to that, I think that can give people more confidence and faith to actually take that leap. And then you go one step on from that, which is exactly where you're coming from in your book and stuff. Is that, well, um, maybe I should really factor this in as a way I look at the world, rather than just accidentally, um, and there are. I mean, you start off following what other people do, and then you get to the point, well, if other people are doing it, I'll do the opposite.
Yes,
And then that's kind of
yes,
where I've ended up now.
yes.
And
Good point.
it seems to work all right. And I think it's important that people in these current era that we're living in
Mm,
learn to do that actually, because we are facing such a complicated world now when it comes to what truth is. Uh,
yes.
and truth is just the same. How do you decide what you're going to believe or what side you're going to pick? But there is always another way. There's a middle way, and the middle way is you don't have to be either side. Again, another scam. That we're taught that duality is everything. That
Mm,
in a very black and white kind of this and
mm,
that. But in actual fact, you don't have to pick one. Being in America, they've got the Democrat, Republican here, conservative, Labour. They're all the same. They're all not the same. They're all, and there's so many ways we can ruminate about it and go around. But you don't actually have to be a part of that system at all.
no.
It is possible. It's only other people have told us. And again, it all comes back to what we're taught at school. We're taught these fundamental truths in our lives when we're at school. I got in lots of trouble when I was at school because I would question things that didn't make any sense to me. And would kind of, I guess they saw me as rebellious. They saw me as a no hoper and everything. Because of that, because I didn't fit in with that. But I think it's important people don't. If we're going to survive in this brave new world that is appearing ahead of us, I think people do need to learn to rely not on everything that they've been told and stuff. And don't be
Yeah.
scared to seem foolish. We it's okay to seem foolish and stupid. To just get rid of all of the pride and everything. Because all it is when we get, ooh, I don't want to seem stupid. But pride is the biggest obstacle, and that's what stops people going down avenues that they might not otherwise go down because they don't want to look
Yeah.
stupid. They don't want to be the fool. They don't want to be the one that everybody laughs at, like the emperor in his invisible coat. They're all laughing at the boy because he said the emperor has no coat.
Mm,
Well, he didn't have a coat. you know?
exactly. Very good points. Um, Lots of great creative people had the ability to shift their belief systems. Now, I mean that from a point of view of like, this week I will be, it's that stars in their eyes thing. This week I shall be so and so, right? And I think that's an interesting point because what it does, as you say, it puts you in like a middle space.
Yeah,
Um, Edward de Bono, who did the lateral thinking books, had this idea of having yes, no, and I think he had this word "po," which was the bit where it's like, well,
yeah. Could
it's
go either
not
way.
anything, it's undecided, it's unproven or whatever it is,
Mm,
um, as in the Scottish legal system, right? So you've got this middle way, and the thing about that middle way, and again, I put that in that book about just
mm,
suspending your disbelief. You don't have to believe something or not believe something. Just suspend your disbelief. So just be
yeah,
in that point where it doesn't really matter.
yeah.
You know what I, whether it's true or not. Does it work?
Mm,
And there are lots of things where you can do something either not knowing how it works, like
mm,
you eat something. You don't have to know how the digestion system works in order to eat something and get nourishment out of something.
mm, mm.
Um, or just create an imaginary reason. You make up a reason why something's going to work for you if you need that, and then when that doesn't work for you
Yeah.
anymore, create another one. And because all of these things, as you say, utterly challenges the way that our education system,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
use that very loosely, because it's just society's rules basically, how that works, because you've got nothing to build on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But of course, when you realise that what you're building on isn't necessarily true anyway, it's just somebody's story, um, and then you think, right, okay, so if that's true, if it's a story, can I make a story for myself? Can I create my own story
Mm.
that enhances my life and the people close to me that I want,
Yeah.
you know, to help? And I think that's a very powerful way forward. But if you look to that,
Absolutely.
it's like it's delusionary.
Well, I mean, and it can be, I guess, to an extent, be destructive, but
Well, yeah,
I think
it can be.
but maybe not all. I mean, sometimes I feel like it's because I totally get what you're saying, but I think that it's often misunderstood.
Mm,
Um, I mean, there are similar elements, like I've said to you in the past, that I used to be Taoist and consider myself a Taoist and look at, and there were some interesting concepts in there that I
yeah,
would really find myself thinking about. And it's that kind of thing. But sometimes people will try to fake it. And, it's a bit like you can be anything you want to be. So, I mean, we live in a time more than others where people are identifying now as cats or whatever they want to be. But that's not what it means. It doesn't mean
no,
step into delusion.
no,
It means, I mean, I think you said as one of our recent things when we were talking about, becoming like embodying what makes another musician, say, like that musician. Like if I want to
yes,
play like Hendrix, I'll
yes,
embody what it is to be like Hendrix.
yes,
And if wearing a bandana helps with that, then
yes,
so be it. Because it's and that's not stepping into delusion. That's stepping into emulation. And
yes,
it doesn't have to be emulation of a real person. It can be an emulation of an idea of what you want to be.
exactly. And
Um,
this
that's
ties
healthy.
into the Second Life stuff, right?
It does, and that's very much. I mean, I guess maybe that's partly why I've ended up quite an oddball because it's like training me to think this week I'll be Anubis, next week.
Exactly.
And there is probably some truth to that because one of the things they discovered that's funny about Second Life is that when and people probably do get this because when even if they've not played it, because even when you're watching television, which I think television is quite dangerous in some respects because people don't realize they're passively accepting stuff in that is then
Yes,
affecting what they think.
yeah,
But when you watch something on a screen, and I certainly know that with Second Life, when you're participating in it, you forget that you're at a screen. So if you're in a virtual nightclub or a virtual concert, it doesn't take much to suspend that belief and suddenly feel that there you are. Um, so much so that they actually found that they had some early on some people who had Parkinson's, and so they had trouble moving and stuff. But when they played Second Life, and there's a whole Parkinson's America charity, I can't remember the name of it, that were really big on this. It was actually helping improve um, the mobility and stuff because it was connecting all the neurons and reconnecting them simply by looking at their avatars walking around and dancing and performing all of these kind of motions. And it just shows that really the connection there between what we think and what is real is mysterious and is quite significant to
yeah. There's a lot of
then people
lots of
realize.
interesting stuff here. There was um when I was I when I was doing the NLP training, Richard Bandler told a story about Marshall Feldenkrais, who's the guy who um I'm trying to think of the discipline, what do they call it now? but it's like some sort of body work. But this, he said that there was this case where he got this lady, an elderly lady, who was crippled, and he he got her onto the sort of couch. So this was being watched by lots of therapists and
mm,
scientists and the rest of it. And he sort of manipulated this lady's muscles and legs and all the rest of it.
mm, mm,
And as he was doing it, he was singing to her
mm, mm,
old melodies of Viennese waltzes. And then within, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, this woman, he got this lady to stand up, and she'd come in a wheelchair. So it's not,
mm.
and she was able to dance with Feldenkrais.
Yeah, amazing,
And of course,
amazing.
they've done a lot of things like this recently, where they've played music to people, where it's effectively taking them back to
Yeah,
earlier
yeah.
lives, earlier time in their life, and their cognition improves.
Mm,
So
mm.
you know that there's something within that about whether it's a belief system about what you can and can't do. It's the rule-based stuff. Where you are. I'm an old person, so therefore I can't do this type of idea.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
yeah. That's
necessarily
true.
logical. It's like this sort of sheen that's going on in the unconscious, which is like, well, that's what's expected of me to think this way
Yeah,
and all the
yeah.
rest of it. And the whole point about creativity, and I see this a lot when I'm teaching older people to play musical instruments, you can, to some extent, unpick certain
Mm,
things within people, and they surprise themselves about what they can do. But you think, well, if you really threw yourself into this, the results would be utterly amazing.
mm.
But it's how much of how far do you want to go down that dark alleyway, as you say,
Yeah,
to realize that I can do all these things, and my body can adapt to my new way of thinking.
yeah,
It takes time, and you've got to be patient and all the rest of it. Yes, it does, etc., etc. But how much can you embrace those things without the terrifying realization that you've lived a lie?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because there is that. People don't like to let go of things because they feel comfortable with them.
It's changing a worldview as you get older is. I mean, I've even from quite early on, I've very much rejected the idea that there is a fixed fundamental worldview, and that's partly due to things I was interested in when I was younger that I read and stuff like that. But I can 100% see now, and this is why I think with the way society is now, the biggest worry that I have for people, not just with AI, but the sudden kind of reality show politics that we have and everything. They talk about new world orders, but it's a new world reality. To be honest, everything is changing so much, but people. So people, and this comes back to really what we were saying earlier, people need to be flexible because it's going to be very, very hard for those that try and hold on and just you know the things change in one direction. They don't unchange. Like AI being an example. Yeah, there are lots of things that have been widely discussed at the moment. How it's bad for this, bad for this artist, bad for musicians, stuff like that. And that's a lot of that is very true in one sense, and that it's changing the way things are, which I think, as we discussed before anyway, things have been the anomaly, the past 100 years have been an anomaly anyway.
Yes.
Um, Nobody complained about that.
No,
But
exactly.
but it is a strange thing. And it's the AI thing, especially, is stepping into territory that is very strange. I mean, like you know, entities aren't human that will converse with us. I mean, this is not something that in our lifetimes we've seen. Them maybe in the past, because I do believe that
Yeah.
things are cyclic, and I believe technology has possibly existed in the past.
Yeah.
Um, you
Or,
know,
or it could have been that, because I'm on, as you know, I'm always intrigued by the fact that we've had the same ideas for a long time.
yeah,
the fact that somebody can look into a black mirror and converse with somebody a long way away. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
that is the mobile phone. But
Yeah,
we've
I
been
mean, there's stories of crystal balls where the
exactly,
talking have existed way before, and we've created it,
exactly. Well,
or was it
even
always
in
there, or was it in the past?
Tolkien, I can't remember what they're called. These balls that that Sauron uses and all the
Yeah,
rest
yeah,
of it.
yeah. That's
It's the
it.
same
Yeah.
point, and the fact that those things actually take over your mind. I mean, if that's not a metaphor,
Well,
I mean, you
I
know,
do.
exactly.
I
So
mean, the
what
TV is one of the most terrible. I mean, we
is
we we got rid of our TV about probably about 15 years ago. We watched a little bit of on-demand stuff for a while after that, but when we eventually got rid of that as well. Um, and it was the most liberating thing. Um, the first couple of weeks, it's a bit like giving up any addiction. It's like, you're giving up smoking or anything. You're climbing the wall bit. What am I going to do with myself? What am I going to do with myself? But then after a while, the peace comes out, and suddenly you realize that you're not worried about certain things, like certain news articles that are being looped round and round. Um, and of course, like any addiction, people don't want to give it up because they're like, no, I like the TV, but really it's harming you. And it is, like you're saying, it's plugged in. And I mean, they call it programming, but it's like it's programming us. We're
yeah,
not picking the programs, it's
it's called
programming.
programming for a
Would
very
you,
good
would,
reason because it's
would,
programming people.
and
Yeah,
it is crazy. I mean, would people go and sit in front of, say a cult leader preaching at them for 5, 6 hours every evening? But they will sit in front of a television. All of these ideas and everything, even the soap operas, even the adverts are pushing narratives and ideas and things. And I think one of the things, and this comes back actually maybe to another point here, that if we're to go down that dark alley and we're going to have a new map, then one of the constructive things that I think anybody can do is to just try and eradicate what as much as they can. It's impossible to do it in its entirety because we have to live in this world, and so we have to interact with the technology to get on. But where there are needless, unnecessary things that are both consuming our time, making what could be productive time useless, but more than that, it programming us with ideas. Every single one of these ideas coming in, even if they're true, even if they happen to be truth in them, they are restrictive and controlling. And the whole thing, people should be under no illusion. All television and even Hollywood productions, lots of music, lots of writing, and all the newspapers, lots of books, all of it is pushing a unified perspective of the world that is just not true, and it's certainly not complete. It's
no,
restrictive, and it's
that's right.
mostly designed to keep people in a certain outlook, which is very hard to break free of. And that's what I'm really saying is that, but if people want to find a really constructive way to change their lives to go in new directions, then they need to break free of the chains that are holding them.
Mm.
And there are simpler ways, like I said, to get rid of it. I really hate TV. I really hate it. And I hate what it does to people. And social media is a problem too. The
Yeah, yeah,
the consumption of social media and this whole idea that we can post completely irrelevant stuff and everyone comes along and likes it. It's it just inflates that pride. And I think we were saying earlier, pride is another thing that stops people. Oh, well, I don't want to be foolish, or I mustn't be seen to do that. But that's just a limiting. It will stop people from getting anywhere. I think
yeah,
that's why lots of religions, I know Taoism and Christianity, and pretty most religion, spiritual paths are big on the idea of humility. But humility
yeah.
isn't, they're not talking about fake humility. They're not talking about a kind of vain vanity, a vain glory where you go, well, I live this pious life, therefore I am a humble. I mean, that's about the most unhumble thing you could do. It's just pride. But it's really to get to the point where you don't care anymore about all of the programming.
Exactly.
You don't care.
It's about, yeah, that is absolutely. as I see the things, it's a bit
And of
like,
course, the programming being yourself as well. Don't care
yes,
about yourself because we're our own worst programmers. You were saying about as we get older, like I'm 47, I'm getting the odd aches and pains now. Now I have a choice. My choice is, right, well, we're moving house at the moment, but once I moved house, I'll go out and get exercise. Maybe it's time. I'm at that point in my life where I need to start. Or I could go, oh, I'm getting old. I won't be able to do anything. I can't play guitar. I can't do it. I may as well give up. I remember when I was younger, I did some temporary stuff. I went some night shift work at B&Q, and I met an old chap in his 90s who was like running around, stacking all the things. And he said he retired like, 15 years ago or something. And his friend retired at the same time as him. And his friend just wanted to drink margaritas and Dectra and enjoy the end of his life. The end of his life lasted 6 months because he did that. Um, you know,
yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think that thing of where you feel that you're of value, right, to the world,
mm,
whether that's to your family or just whatever, or you're just to that the value that you actually exist within the world, right? I
yeah,
think is a really important point because if you feel that you have no value,
mm,
and we know this from the point of view of people working in jobs, the people that work in a job that they think is pointless and that they are not valued by anybody
mm,
actually are so depressed within a job,
mm,
right? So if you think, well, on a small scale, that's quite an interesting sort of study,
mm.
that can correlate to your life expectancy. This has all been done as a study,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You think, well, let's just look at that and think, right, okay, look at what a job is. A job is just something that you're earning some money to,
mm,
ease the wheels of life and all the rest of
mm,
it. But if your reason for living is that job,
mm.
well, best of luck. If your
Yeah,
reason for living is the fact that you're here,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then you just do all these other things, whether it's being creative or you're writing your book or you're doing whatever, but you
yeah, yeah.
just happen to be doing a job as well down the road to or what
100%.
it is, you know,
Our jobs aren't
then
our identity.
you could absolutely change the way that you exist within
Yeah.
the world, right? Because it gives you a reason.
Mm,
That's perhaps the wrong word, but it gives you a way to connect with how life is and how you respond to things because something happens, you think, oh, okay, come on, you adapt and whatever. It gives you this sort of mental flexibility and all the rest of it. I think it's
mm.
so important.
Yeah, I
So
really think it is. I think it's a liberating thing though, but it is important. Um, but again, comes with shaking off the rest of it. I mean, I think, it's what Solomon calls like the vanities of, and, he goes through all of Ecclesiastes, well, everything's vanity and we're just a vapor, and, and again, we, again, it comes back to what I'm saying, getting rid of the pride, the humility to accept that the things we think matter really don't. Um, I mean, I guess when it comes to what really matters in life, it is a kind of is the love, but not any other kind of, not all kind of loves. Like the word love is used a lot these days,
mm,
where really what they're talking about is a kind of lust, kind of sexual kind of love and stuff. But it's more like in the Greek word agape, and it's a sacrificial love. It's the kind of love, not even just for children and stuff, but for a stranger. But
yeah,
if you choose to live life more like that,
yeah,
and that includes a love for ourselves,
yes,
that's not to accept, to go, oh, all the bad things I do are right. If you love everybody, then you accept that the bad things you've done, and you feel guilt and, repentance on that, and you move forward, um, and, be constructive. But it is something that is often people forget that one, to love ourselves, not in an arrogant, prideful way. In fact, to truly love ourselves, I think, is the humility, because it's to understand where we sit in the scale of things,
Yeah.
you know, and but to understand that we've got to break free of the programming. The
Yeah.
programming, because the programming doesn't want us to love other people, doesn't want us to engage in a life full of fruit and love and kindness. It wants us to be controlled by a system that's easy to control us. And I know that, lots of your viewers would probably totally agree with that, I imagine. But I know there are lots of people in the world that they wouldn't. They'd think, oh, what's he talking about and stuff. But it's really there is some, my it is like a conspiracy. I'm not saying it's a deliberate necessarily. It's just maybe the way
No, not no. I get
humanity
that.
is the way humanity kind of
Yeah,
tends towards.
it's almost like the thing that the whatever you want to call it, the energy force that
Yeah,
comes out of something like capitalism, for instance. It's almost like
yeah.
capitalism is some sort of, you
Well, it's
know,
just an outward expression of what's inside people, the same as communism, the same
yeah,
as
exactly, absolutely,
they're,
yeah,
they're outward expressions of what's in us. And that's why almost every single one of them ends up corrupt at the end,
yeah,
because
exactly, yeah, yeah, yeah,
because even if it starts with a good intention, it's easy for it to go astray.
yeah,
Um, but again, this is stuff that it's interesting to know about, but to an extent, we're best, I think, not to worry too much about it and just throw it all aside and say, yeah, but my life is here. My life is experienced through these eyes and my interactions with people. And the time I'm here, I'll make the most of it by being constructive to others and to myself, and trying my best. To ourselves is the hardest. It's hard to be kind to ourselves. Well, I find it hard. I don't. Maybe other people don't, but I find it hard. I'm always like, you know, but again, that might just be because, at school and stuff, it all sunk in. The earliest times in our life, and we have all these people telling us we can't do stuff or that we're going to fail. Um, and
Well,
it
yeah,
takes a
but the
long
thing is,
time.
you've proved them wrong, and this is what is a
Yeah,
nice thing, right?
but it's
And that,
still there. The negativity is still there,
oh
though,
yeah,
because
no,
every time something doesn't quite work out,
yeah,
or maybe they were right.
yeah,
It's
but
always there in the background.
yeah, of course, it's always there in the background. It's sort of like background noise, isn't it? Background
Yeah,
static.
yeah.
Right, Jim. I think that's a good place to stop. That was a great chat, and I've been waiting to do this for ages because I know how you are with your creative stuff. There's a lot there for people. I think that's really really very cool.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's good, mate.
Yeah,
Thanks ever so
yeah,
much.
right.
So I'm going to say goodbye now, but don't disappear. We'll have a quick chat
All right.
before we finish. All right, that's
Okay.
brilliant.
All
Thanks ever
right.
so much, mate. Speak soon.
Bye. Bye.